morning, everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started. We are recording this session, so just so that you're aware. And for people who would have joined us online, we're going to go ahead and make sure that the recording is shareable, and we will get that out as quickly and as many ways as we can kind of figure out how to do that. So I'm going to start, because this is Bray School Stories, I'm going to go ahead and start it the way I always do. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. And my name is Elizabeth Drembus. I'm the genealogist with the W&M Bray School Lab and host of Bray School Stories. In service to the Bray School Lab's mission to uncovering and documenting, preserving, and disseminating the history and legacies of the Williamsburg Bray School, we host a monthly series in order to share recent genealogical findings, engage the Descendant community in this work in order to broaden our understanding of the legacies, and enlist the help of historians and genealogists, as well as the general public, in furthering the conversations and the research surrounding the Williamsburg Bray School. The title of the monthly series, as I mentioned, is Bray School Stories. This morning's focus, Foundations and Furniture Tacks, Connections Through Archaeological Discoveries. We are coming to you on location at the annual Slate seminar hosted by the W&M Bray School Lab. So first, some housekeeping items. This is going to be recorded and it will be later available on our YouTube site. Our monthly sessions are designed to spark conversation, and even though we are few in numbers in the room this morning, we hope that this morning's conversation is going to be engaging and lively, and we hope you all participate in it. I am joined by three very special, very patient guests this morning, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce them now. First, Janice Canaday is a lifelong resident of Williamsburg and a member of the Bray School Descendant community. She's an educator and an interpreter, and she also serves as the African American Community Engagement Manager for the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation. Thank you for being here, Janice. Next, I can't believe you guys sat in alphabetical order. So next, Jack Gary. Jack is the Associate Vice President for Historical Resources for the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation. He leads a team of archaeologists, curators, architects, and scholars to reveal the hidden stories of Williamsburg's past. He is currently directing the archaeological research for the restoration of the garden of John Custis IV, as well as the research into Williamsburg's First Baptist Church, the oldest Black church in the United States. Jack oversees a collection of over 60 million artifacts and the development and construction of the new Campbell Archaeology Center, which will open in 2026 as the country's premier archaeology museum. He is the former Director of Archaeology and Landscapes for Thomas Jefferson's Poplar Forest, where he directed the archaeological research that led to the Garden Club of Virginia's restoration of the ornamental landscape surrounding Jefferson's Villa Retreat. So welcome, Jack. Thank you for being here. And last but certainly not least, Elizabeth Monroe. Elizabeth is the Archaeological Research Manager and Co-Director of W&M Center for Archaeological Research, a position she has held since April of 2022. She has a PhD in anthropology from Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri, and has worked at the center as a senior staff member since 2004. Her interest in archaeology stems from a love of history, art, biology, and puzzles, combined with a childhood spent just down the road in York County, Virginia. Welcome, Elizabeth. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of get us started on just some grounding information, so we all know what kind of we're talking about this morning. You know, we talk a lot about the building and the discovery and confirmation in 2020 that the building was in fact the Williamsburg Bray School from 1760 and held the classes there from 1760 to 1765. We also talk a lot about the students, which is super important to keep them centered in this story. We don't talk a lot about the land that the building sat on. And there was an article in June of 2025 with the revelation about the finding of the near complete 18th century foundation of the Williamsburg Bray School. Now, if you're not familiar with where I'm talking about, the location is at 524 Prince George Street It's in Williamsburg at the corner of Boundary Street and Prince George Streets. And so let's talk a little bit about the timeline of the land. So in 1760, we know that the Williamsburg Bray School, the building itself was built and the school opened in September of 1760. So for 5 years, that building on that site was rented to the associates of the late Dr. Bray for the use of the school. Now, when the children and the teacher moved out to go to a larger building, the building itself stayed there on the land, but the children and the school moved to another building. And we don't know, we know post 1765, it was a residence of the Diggs family, and it was then known as Diggs House. So the building survives relatively intact. Little is known of the ownership of that period from 1765 to the 1920s, and people are looking into that, but we just don't have a lot of good records on that. But we know that in 1921, the property was purchased by the Williamsburg Methodist Church, and then the house itself was expanded. Some of those wings started to be added, and it served as a dormitory for female students. Between 1926 and 1927, it was expanded again, and then it was named Brown Hall. Now, in March of 1930, the house itself was picked up and moved up the block, okay? At that point, it was a 3-story brick dormitory, no, so it moves up the block, and then the 3-story brick dormitory is built on the site, and it is, in 1939, purchased by William and Mary, so that's Brown Hall. Still on that same land. Flash forward to 2012 and 2014. Between those time periods, both Colonial Williamsburg Foundation and William and Mary conduct archaeological field schools on the site under and around Brown Hall. Then, of course, in 2020, when the school is confirmed as the Williamsburg Bray School, there's renewed interest and more archaeological field schools are then done. And so between 2023 and 2025, there's the discovery of the double-barreled privy, and then continued archaeological work until this spring and the discovery of the foundation and the not known before the cellar was found. So that gives us a sense of there's a lot of history in that ground. And there's a lot of things to be learned from the ground that can help inform what we know and how we understand the Williamsburg Bray School. So we're going to have a little bit of a conversation. I've got some questions that I have already prepared our panel members with, and so we're just going to talk about that, knowing that that's the area that we're talking about. So I'm going to throw this open to the group. The first one is, how long have you been involved with the archaeological work at the Bray School site or the rediscovery work of the Williamsburg Bray School, and what drew you to it? And who wants to go first?
I mean, I probably have, I probably have the briefest, direct association. Of course, you know, I've been following the discovery and I watched the building move down the road, and that was just so cool. Cause my office is just down Jamestown Road, and just watching them delicately trim the trees so that they wouldn't be harmed by the building moving down the road. That was.
Or the trees harm the building.
Well, okay, fair. My direct connection started in May when President Rowe, President William and Mary, called us up and said, hey, we need help. And I'm not gonna say no. I'm not gonna say no. And so things moved very quickly. The main impetus of our work is the Gates Hall, as it is now known, is already undergoing rehabilitation. And it was vital that we preserve as much of the archaeology, much of the data as we could. Parts of the foundation and the cellar had already been explored by staff from Colonial Williamsburg. Parts of it were going to be just destroyed as part of the rehabilitation project. It's a 100-year-old brick building that they want to last for another 100 years. So there was going to have to be some work around the foundation. So we got in there and spent about 20 field days trying to gather everything that we could. And then what is left is gonna be preserved in place. So in the future, in another 100 years, when some massive renovation has to happen, the archaeologists of the future will be able to look at more of this, of the cellar. Our work is ongoing, the field work is done, the artifacts have been washed and cataloged, we're still working on the report. But it's been a real highlight, I feel like, for the center. It's just a very interesting, in spite of the challenging conditions, working conditions, it's just a very interesting site. We're learning a lot. I've learned about, I study animal bones. I have to be a generalist in my job, but my main thing is animal bones. We definitely got some animal bones. But I'm learning about furnishings and personal decorations and corsetry and things. It's just been a learning experience and a great opportunity to interact with the public, to tell them about the stories that we're learning. So that's my finish.
I guess we'll just go down the line here. My connection with the property goes back to the 1990s. All right, the project hadn't started yet, but as a student at William and Mary, I put myself through school doing a lot of different jobs. One of them was moving furniture for the college. And so one summer we moved every single mattress out of Brown dormitory. Now these are 20-year-old cloth mattresses. You want to talk about a nasty job. So my connection with Brown dormitory is deep. But from an archaeological perspective, the first time I was exposed to the project was when Colonial Williamsburg was doing the first field schools on it. However, I was at Poplar Forest at the time, and I brought my own field school to come to Colonial Williamsburg and see what was going on. And we came to see the site, and they said, "Oh, this is the site of the Bray School." And, okay, what is that? And we described that this was a school to educate Black children. Wait, what? I mean, how come we've never heard of this? And so it was just, that moment of, oh my God, there is a story here that's incredibly complex. And so when the building was rediscovered in 2020, as Elizabeth pointed out, at Colonial Williamsburg, we realized we need to do those early archaeological field schools got us good information about the area, a little bit of information around the building, but not enough for us to do what we at Colonial Williamsburg do best, which is recreate things. And that was the goal, to recreate the experience, the building, the landscape, and the experience of those children as much as we possibly could, which led us to going back to doing more excavating almost the entire area outside of Brown Dormitory. And yes, we even snuck in one of the hatches and crawled around in the crawl space when we weren't supposed to see if the foundation for the building was still there. We could see just little bits of it, but not very much until the creation of Gates Hall, when they ripped out the floor, and that's when we could finally see, like, oh my God, there it is, the foundation of the Bray School is intact. So, so our goal is, and just like Elizabeth, our work is ongoing. We are still going through all the artifacts that we recovered from the excavations that Colonial Williamsburg has done, and we'll be able to partner up with W&M Center for Archaeological Research and come up with what should be a really, really deep understanding through the material culture and the archaeological information about the lives of the students at this school. So I came at it from the property as a student when I was a student, and then I learned that, oh my God, this is a place where there were students, and now still I guess what I'm getting at, that's what has sparked my curiosity about this project, is that continuation of education and students on that piece of property.
I'm not an archaeologist.
Which you're around.
I've been around here. So my perspective is, I don't even know what my perspective is supposed to be. I can tell you though, that as an interpreter at Colonial Williamsburg, when I showed up in 2007, full-time as a school group interpreter, they were talking about in our training, the Bray School. They were always mentioning it, but there was nothing that said, we know where the building is. It was just suggested that there was a building, there was a school. So that was very interesting to me. And so when they finally found the building, or thought they had found it, because you were always hearing talk about it, it would show up and disappear, show up and disappear, which was annoying for a while. And when they finally did find the building, that they thought very well might be the school, that was just a moment where I was awestruck. So I was like, okay, what are they gonna do now? And when we found out where it actually was, my mind just kept going back to all the times that we walked past it. People growing up in the area, whatever their connection was or interaction was with that building or that location, not knowing the building's really giving you, like winking his eye if it had one, like I'm over here, you know, you wonder if I exist, I'm over here. But for me, that building, when I think about it, especially when I saw it, it was an affirmation of their humanity in a way that had never shown up before. And not just that there was education for selected children from the time that school opened till Ann Widger got sick and passed away, but a reaffirming of the fact that education was always going on in these other buildings in this town, whether it was a kitchen, whether it was in the service hall, whether it was outside under an oak, a school without walls, but wherever the enslaved were or free blacks were, there was always teaching. And so to have that building just gave us a focal point. And so I kind of became consumed within myself, waiting for the fallout. You know, how we're gonna use it, how we're gonna talk about it, and how much importance and relevance is gonna be given to the community.
Thank you, thanks. So on the screen behind us, we have just on a loop photographs provided by Elizabeth and Jack, as well as a couple photographs from members of Strategic Cultural Partnerships who were able to take photographs of the foundation itself. And so we wanted to make sure that you all had a kind of a visual of kind of what we're talking about. You know, this is the stuff that's coming out of the ground. And of course, as we mentioned, the ground itself has a long continuum of occupation. And so there are going to be lots of artifacts from various different parts of that time period. Although I did ask specifically, can you maybe bring the ones that are relevant to Bray School time periods? So I'm curious, what was one of your favorite discoveries? And for Janice, you know, what was one after you've now seen the lab, you know, what are some of your favorite either artifacts or discoveries, and why is it your favorite?
I actually have two. First one is the thimble that was shown to me. I don't even remember the time period or what it connects to, but the little tiny thimble for someone sewing, and it had the word love inscripted on it. That blew my mind. My mother was a seamstress, where she loved sewing, and she would have made me have something like that, trying to hook me into sewing, and it probably would have worked. So I just thought that was a cute little trinket. But the one that really got my attention, was, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the slate pencil that had the ring around it. So you told me some might have been from that time, but others maybe mechanically made or whatever,
Yeah,
or produced.
I think the research that we've looked into, we definitely have different kinds of slate pencils. But somebody was looking at ones that have, rings around them are 18th century.
Yeah.
And ones that have, you know, linear along the length are 19th century. And we definitely have at least one 18th century.
Right, and that slate pencil, is an igniter for me. Because there's so much controversy around the ability to write and whether writing was being taught. And I think it makes me wonder why we're so resistant to wanting to acknowledge that people might have been taught to write. What is it about it that causes, to me, and it could be a lack of me saying the right words, but my feeling is a fear. You know, if I can read, I'm certainly going to want to write. How are you going to shut down my curiosity? Who's going to teach me? You know, what would be the evidence that we would accept that would be conclusive enough that we would say, yes, definitely writing was going on at that school, even if we can't find something to say so, the possibility is so strong we couldn't ignore it. So that I love that little slate pencil. I love all the questions that it brings about, all the possibility. So that would be it for me.
Well, you've asked for one discovery, that's asking an archaeologist, that's asking who's your favorite child.
Yes.
We have plenty of time.
Yeah, but the one that was really kind of revelatory for us, and this was kind of early on in the most recent work, was the identification, as you pointed out, Elizabeth, of the privy. And so this is these are the bathrooms that are being used by the children and by Wager, and that what's getting thrown into them is the trash of everyday life that's going into these privies when the school moves. They don't need it anymore, and it's filled in with all the trash that was accumulating while the school was there. So for us, finding that window of 5 years of when the school was on the site that's really tricky as an archaeologist to be able to find windows like that. But those privies gave us that window. And there's all sorts of great material in there, but I want to point out one of the things that I found was poignant that came out of the privy was the animal bone. And we did an analysis of the types of animal bone. So this is the food that is being consumed on site, and it's food that is being consumed by Wager, but also the children there. And what we saw is a combination of domesticated species. So we see lots of pig and cow, common stuff, but we also saw a lot of freshwater fish in there as well. And that I feel is almost really coming in with the children. They're fishing, they're catching the fish, they're consuming it, their families are catching the fish, they're sending them to school with this food. And so as a father who packs his, embarrassed to say, 13-year-old daughter her lunch every day, she should be doing it herself, but every day I pack her lunch, and I think it's the same thing. It really kind of hit me, this sending your child off to school with lunch, with food, one of these basics of life. And I just love that, and those fish bone just kind of speak to that, and you extend that to the love and care that a parent has for the child, and they're gone from them for the day. So anyhow, I won't get too sappy, but but it was a great discovery to be able to see that really and be able to make that personal connection. That's what we really want to try and do, is get relevance and what was it like for the children on that site. So bringing it back to concepts that we can all relate to: food, our children, school lunch. we all know school lunch. So anyhow, I think that was a good one for.
So, for our work, we were looking at a much broader period of time. I mean, you were too, but, we just, we had everything from, a few little chips of stone from native peoples making stone tools, to stuff from the young Methodist ladies who lived in the dorm before the 1930, when the brick dorm was built. So we have a wide range. But in terms of, connection to the Bray period, you stole mine. I love those slates and slate pencils, and yes, many of them almost certainly post-date the Bray period. But we have at least one 18th century slate pencil, which again, I have to think, if you're learning to read, how do you not teach yourself to write, even if someone wasn't teaching? So that I find that's like a little tangible evidence, maybe a tangible evidence of rebellion. But also, in terms of classes of artifacts, there are, of course, the animal, which I love. And you'll see some up there in a bit. We got eggshell, we got the usual suspects, pork, beef, chicken, but there's crab claws, and there's fish parts, and there's also, when that slide comes around, look in the upper left corner and you'll see a little rat skull. We know that there were rat nests in the building, so Junior was there. But the other thing that I love, this project, I have seen more artifacts that can be associated with women than I have seen at other sites that I've worked on. We have so much sewing paraphernalia. We have straight pins and hooks and eyes and so many buttons. In fact, so many buttons, and buttons that seem to be in the process of being made, that, I mean, we know that sewing arts were one of the things being taught to the children. Were they also being taught to make buttons? Maybe the boys were making buttons, bone buttons. I don't know. But just so many things related to sewing, but corsetry, hairpins, jewelry. Now, a lot of the jewelry is probably 19th or early 20th century. But there is a silver Spanish 1 real piece that's pierced and was worn as a pendant that dates from 1753. So that may well have been from that period. So personal adornment, personal items, so many things for kids, so many clay marbles. You got so many clay marbles. These are our marbles. There was that glass marble with the red stripes on it. That postdates, that's an 1840s German marble, but kids, so many kids lived and, well, I mean, adults can play with marbles. I don't want to harsh your note. But these are things that we associate with women, with kids. These are real tangible connections to people in the past whose stories aren't often told, you know, which I'm anticipating one of your later questions. So sorry about that. Anyway, that's what I've got.
All right, so Elizabeth, you kind of alluded to it. So the question that I raised with you guys was why, and I'd love the audience to also think about this as well as you, how you would answer this. Why is this project so important in this moment in time that we're in? And why do you think this archaeological work and what it has to say to us, why is this so important? I know it's a big question, but what do you guys think?
I'll start from
Keep going.
my perspective. So from my perspective, so the timeliness of it was the stuff is going to be destroyed. Most of the site that's within the building has been preserved, but parts of it were going to be destroyed. So there was a time pressure to collect this data before they started drilling micro piles to support the columns and shoring up the foundation, the outer foundation. And I just want to say that most of that foundation is still there. The foundation that's along Prince George, probably Brown Hall, when they built the brick Brown Hall, they probably took out that foundation, but all the rest of it was still there. And most of the rest of it is still there. Parts of it were taken out so that they could put in these mechanical things and to firm up the foundation. But a lot of that foundation is still there. So the timeliness of it for me is we had to get it out of the ground. But the other thing about this work, about archaeology, one of the important things, one of the key things about archaeology is we can record and tell the stories of people who aren't here to tell those stories and who couldn't write those stories down. Maybe they could, I don't know, but who didn't write those stories down or did not pass them down in a way that we can all read them. Historians look at records, archaeologists look at stuff in dirt, and it's important to get at those stories any way that we can. I think archaeologists in particular, archaeology is under the framework of anthropology. We're studying people. It's not about the stuff. We love stuff, but it's not about the stuff. It's about the stories that we can tell with those things. Archaeology is sort of uniquely poised to be able to do that. And we like to steal from other disciplines to be able to tell those stories. Learning stuff all the time, and we want to share that information with everybody.
Yeah, I'll jump onto that stuff part.
Yeah.
To say that I think for this project, the stuff, for archaeology in general, but for this project, the stuff is the tangible things that we can all look at together. And so why this moment? Well, this is a moment where we can't seem to agree on anything. And so do these objects, at least the objects, the foundations, the space itself, the building itself, does it provide us? They should provide us the things that we can all look at together and have common touch points that we can agree on. Let's start with, those are bricks in the ground. Okay, look, if we can't agree on that, well, then we're really in trouble. But the story starts with these things and being able to see them, so they're not ideas that are just that we can't that can be hard to grasp. It's the tangible thing. So maybe I'm a bit naive in thinking that we can all look at these things together and start these conversations. And we may not in the end agree after talking about these things, but at least it gives us the starting point to start the conversations and have a common ground that we're starting from. So again, perhaps a little naive, but I think if we don't look at this optimistically, then what are we doing?
For me, with the building, it's important to have that building there because one, it's there. We've accepted what it is and the function of the building. And how can I say this, so I don't sound political, but being a Black woman, it's political. So I'm just gonna say it, so please give me some grace and mercy. In a time when our history is being denied, erased, covered up, reduced, I can go to that building, and you mentioned bricks, I can talk about bricks. I can talk about who was making those bricks, who was digging or building the brickyard. I can talk about carpentry and who was probably doing that, how they were taking apart buildings and numbering buildings so they could put them back together like a puzzle when they were moved. I can use that building to talk about my story. And my story will empower me and others. And so it's been there for generations and generations of people who look like me and everybody else in this room have been here and have used their skills, developed skills, and impacted this place. And so for me, it's a tangible that's not going away, hopefully. Nobody's laws are gonna take it away. And we have it, it's been there, it's always been there. And now we can talk about it, show how that building impacted the daily life of not just the children, but everybody else in this town and around, and the environment itself. So I'm glad it's there, and I'm gonna use it to its fullest.
It's a good, but the Bray School, and we can do this probably with a lot of different things in Williamsburg, but the Bray School allows us to make so many connections across the entire city. It's not just, okay, it's just one site. I mean, these kids were coming from a lot of other places, connecting with a lot of other people, and it's just, it is the community that can be described in that one building. It gives us that opportunity to show those connections all over town with everybody. Yeah.
It's so Williamsburg, right? It's so like everything is, one of the grad students, one of our multi-hatted people, there's Margaret Perry, who works for you and as a grad student in William and Mary. She's been looking into the ownership and she's finding all of these connections to Eastern State Hospital. And then you look at the names, it's like, hey, that bug trout, hang on. Yeah, but it's such a Williamsburg thing. Everything is so connected. And that's probably true everywhere, but this is where we live. So, we see these connections. The Diggs family, Maria Diggs, was the head housekeeper at William and Mary. She was apparently very stingy with the candles. There were complaints. Her brother, Edward, was an alumnus, and also a patient at Eastern State Hospital. There are all of these connections. It's, you're just scratching the surface and then, so anyway.
Pull on one thread with this story, it's gonna connect you all.
Yeah. I see that definitely with the genealogical research as well. It's just like, oh my goodness, these families are so connected, or even just like, oh, wait a second, these two children are coming from these two houses, which means they're neighbors. And so, wait a second, hold on, these two enslaving families have married into each other. So now where are these two friends,
Right.
where are they gonna, right?
Rich Dudley Diggs.
Well, thank you, exactly. Exactly. All right, so we've kind of touched on this, but I'm wondering if maybe there's a different answer. Well, I'm gonna ask it. What is one of the most valuable lessons learned as a result of this project? It's a little different take on why is this important, but so what is one of the most valuable lessons learned as a result of this project? Pass it. Oh, pass it, okay.
I think just because we don't know the answer right now, doesn't mean we won't know the answer in the future. And that has shown itself over and over again with this project. We did the first dendrochronology on the buildings, like, we can't figure it out. We'll do it again. And then we figured it out. We didn't think we'd be able to find a deposit that dates just that time, 5-year time period. We found the building. We didn't think the foundations were going to be there, were destroyed by ground. Oh, they were there. So so to me, the most valuable lesson is that, just because we don't know it now, doesn't mean we won't know it. And two, this is what happens when you undertake sustained, intensive research into a topic. And we have to sustain it. It's not just a project-based sort of thing. And so we gotta keep it going. Yeah, that's it.
I had to give a presentation last week to the people who paid us to do this work and to thank them for that. What I said was, even when I turn in my report, it's not gonna be the last word on this, on our work, let alone the whole project, right? We're gonna be learning things from these artifacts for decades to come. And it's such a rich assemblage, students could be looking at this material and finding things out for a long period. Thesis after thesis, exactly right. And the other thing I learned is always double the budget for the artifact analysis. We had 1,000 artifacts come out of one layer. The first test unit, 1,000 artifacts in the first layer. That wasn't even the good stuff. We recovered something like 8,200 artifacts. The unit that you guys put in was another 1,600 or something like that. And that's just the little bit of stuff from inside, and we didn't even barely scratch the surface of it. The future archaeologists are gonna be jazzed. Yeah.
They've already said it, history's always evolving, so just hang in there, there's more to learn, just be observant and be open-minded, never say never.
I love that. I keep reminding myself to be that eternal optimist that, the more is gonna be, for me, it's where are the records, where are they gonna be found, and how are we gonna build these connections? But, knowing that there are these artifacts coming out, it's looking at the whole picture. It's the oral history, it's the genealogy, it's the archaeology, it's all of that together to really build this story. And I think, I get so siloed that, just gotta stay in the archives and just look at the records, but no, you gotta be able to then put those pieces together, okay, so this is, gonna be kind of the last question I have for our panel members, then we're gonna engage, people in the audience. So given what we know about the history of the site, what do you want people to experience when they enter Gates Hall, when it is opened and it's operating and they enter into it? What do you hope, or what do you want people to experience when they enter that new space?
I just want the experience to be something that opens their mind, their thought processes, that makes them question things that they've thought, think out of the box. And I really want them to think about all people, that all lives connect, that there are things that people appreciated then, that they do today. Like you said, when you were packing lunch for your child, your daughter to send her to school, connect right back to those children who were being sent to school with something. I don't know how it would have been, a sandwich would have been wrapped up or an apple or something, but that mother was thinking about that child, or that elder on that property was thinking about their child the same way you thought about yours. That even though we were living in different time periods under different constraints, as far as our humanity goes, it connects us. It's not foreign. And I think sometimes we think of these people as being, I don't know, so otherworldly, but they're really closely connected to us if we allow ourselves to really connect humanity-wise and just say they're not so different from us. Because I can imagine that little boy fishing or little girl fishing, same way I dug up worms for my father to go fishing. I hated doing that, but I'm just saying. We enjoy some of the same things. So I just want people to walk in and just know that that real people were here, having real moments, just like the moments that we have, so.
Yeah, I think an appreciation of the legacy of education on that piece of property. And then when you walk through that door, particularly if you're a student, that you're just part of the continuing story of education on that specific piece of property. As we often say about, well, once you teach a child to read, you can control what they do with that. Wait, think about that for, a student walking into, I'm not sure what's gonna be happening in this facility, but it's going to be educational, I'm sure. And so, what is the knowledge that the students coming out of that building, they will take, and then, you can't control what happens to it after that. What are they gonna go do with it? And so that acknowledgement of the legacy of education, and then taking it and taking it and spreading it around.
So I think it's integrative conservation and excellence in government, and what else is gonna be in
I
Gates?
can say.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, I mean, I think it's relevant.
Gates Hall is going to be a research hub for William and Mary, and it's bringing together the Global Research Institute, Aid Data, the Whole of Government Center for Excellence, and the Institute for Integrative Conservation. And it's really exciting that this internationally facing research hub is going to create awareness of, to Jack's point, this legacy of education through the years from way back when to the present. So quite powerful. And if I may, sorry to take the mic, I'm Anne Marie Stock and I oversee strategic cultural partnerships working between William and Mary and Colonial Williamsburg. And to Elizabeth's question about lessons learned, a huge lesson for me is what we can do together. And I'm looking at William and Mary, Colonial Williamsburg together, and I'm just so very proud of the work that's been done by people with the collaborative spirit, willing to share their talent. So I didn't mean to do a commercial announcement, but I just want to express publicly my deep gratitude to all of these collaborative partners.
And then I will just answer the question, pretty much echoing what Janice said. It's, for me, the sort of tangible, it's like marbles. I had marbles, doll parts. I had a doll. Sewing needles, all of these things that people are still using today, and some things that people aren't using today, but you can see analogs of things that we're using today. And then again, that kind of revolutionary act of writing and what imagination, all of these things are, tools to spark our imaginations today, but people had imaginations in the past. They were not, they're not stick figures. They're living human beings who had hopes and dreams and played with marbles and ate fish for lunch. And I'm getting chills thinking about it now. It's that real human connection. So.
Thank you so much, all of you. I appreciate this so much. And I think if I could add my 2 cents of what I hope people experience, I hope, it's one thing for me to walk into the restored Bray School building, and there is power in that. I mean, I feel it. And when I am stuck, I take a walk and I go stand in that building and I'm like, I need inspiration. And so there's something about that power of that building. And I'm hopeful that the land and the building that Gates Hall will be on top of, that the power of that place won't get lost, the power of what happened there when that building was first built and those students first walked in that building. I'm hoping that is still, that people still recognize that in the new building.
I just want to say something. About a month ago, there was a lady, I'm trying to remember her last name. Her first name was Miss Cleo. She lives in Port Royal, Virginia. She's 95 years old. She came down and I took her into the Bray School. She lives in a house that was built in the 1740s. She knew about the London lockbox, which I didn't know anything about. She was looking at the structure of the building, and everything she touched evoked a story about her house and growing up, and things that her grandparents or her great grandfather was enslaved. His name was Tobias. And she was saying that the land that the road that she drove on down here from Port Royal, used to be land that belonged to her great grandfather, who was enslaved. And she was talking about the trip down, everything she saw evoked a memory, walking up the steps. If you could have seen the way she rubbed her hand on the railing to go up the stairs, tears came out her eyes, and I asked her, I said, what do you want people to feel or experience when they come here? What's the importance of this building? She says, this is just one thing of many things that we need to use to tell our stories, to evoke that memory and empower us. Not just from my generation, but generations to come. If you could have seen that woman walking through, and she had this cute little thing where she'd walk over, just flex her fingers, like she was throwing something at the walls. I was like, I didn't know what was going on. And she said, I could hear him, can you hear him? Like, no, I don't hear anything. Maybe it's not the time for me to hear, but I mean, and when she left that building, when she walked out, she turned around and looked at that building like she was blessing it or something. And when she went down the steps and down the street, she was a walking tour, because everywhere she stopped had something to say. She had a story. I took her into the joiner, and she talked with Ian Martin, and she knew more about the tools, or as much as he did, and they were just lost in conversation. The things that she was sharing with him, she impacted him, he impacted her. People on the street were drawn to the conversation. This woman weighed about 115 pounds, had more energy than I ever thought about having. She would wait for me to come down the steps, and when we gave her a carriage ride, she jumped up in the carriage. I was trying to figure out how I was gonna get in the carriage, So I'm just saying, it was amazing the impact that that building had on her. She has a 2-room building that she's made into a museum as well. So she invited me to come up to see her museum as well. But she was so thrilled, and she said, y'all just gotta keep telling the stories. She said, to keep using this building. She said, because you haven't realized the power it's going to have to change the world yet. So I thought that was powerful.
Thank you. So you all have been wonderful and hearing a whole lot of things, and I kind of want to be able to turn it over to you now. And on your tables, you will see some pages. And so there's actually some definite information we would like to gather today. One of the questions is, so when we're thinking about, once the Gates Hall is built, there will be a permanent exhibit. And so we'd like to know what you would like to see in that exhibit, and how these stories can continue to be told through the artifacts that were found, through the history that we know and the research that's being done. And so one of the questions is, should we mark the outline of the foundation on the floor of Gates Hall, and kind of how would you envision that? We don't know yet, but it could be using a metal strip or an inlay in the design of the floor, or by contrasting color and carpet. But if you have some thoughts on how, if you were to walk into that building and you want to be able to acknowledge that the Bray School was there, how would you like to see that? And in displaying a portion of the original foundation, it's one of the photographs shows a portion of the foundation. Should it be open and exposed to visitors? Should it be encased for protection? What's your preference? How would you see that as part of it? And whether, should it be on the floor level or should it be elevated? So we'd love your input on that, but I also want to be able to invite your questions for our panel members, or even just discussion on what you've heard and things that have kind of struck you this morning. So Maureen's got the microphone.
Then, let me say before we go to questions, thank you, Elizabeth, for leading an incredible session. Thank you to all our panelists. We're not done yet. I want to acknowledge it's been incredibly insightful, incredibly moving. I do want to say something about the questionnaires. I think everyone has one. If you don't have one, I'll get one to you. Again, there are 3 very specific questions that we're asking, and they're articulated on the questionnaire. So I'll make sure to gather them before everybody leaves, but questions, I will come to you. All right, Terry.
Thank you, Maureen, and thank you to the panel too. It's been fabulous listening to this. One of the questions I have is about a discovery that was made during the field schools with Mark Costro, and that's the well that is on the property. And I know it costs a bomb to excavate a well, but is there any chance of finding the funding for that? And is it something you might undertake in the future?
Yeah, so there was a well discovered, it's on the street side, on Prince George Street, and we believe it's a community well. As opposed to a well specifically for that property. So in certain parts of town, there were community wells, so multiple households would have used that well, which is why it's on the street as opposed to back behind in the lot itself. Excavating a well is incredibly difficult and expensive, and one of the things that you would have to do in a modern excavation, as you go down, you have to also go out. And I think it's for every foot you go down, it's a foot and a half you go out, something like that. It's a
4 down, you can go down 4 feet, and then if you go
Yeah.
deeper than 4, you've got to widen, and I think it depends on the soil conditions. But
yeah, and so the fact that it's on Prince George Street, if it is a well like most of our wells in town, which are 40 feet deep, the aromas is gone. We'd have to expand all the way out.
You can do it along Prince George Street too, if I remember. You can do it along Prince George Street, that kind of trenching, if I remember correctly.
Well, you have to go all the way around the thing as you go down. That, unfortunately, it is logistically, I won't say it's impossible, because I also said that earlier to my comments that we think we might not know what we will eventually. But right now, it's logistically would not be possible to do it. Yeah. Some of it has been excavated. We did go 4 feet down into it, and it's the top of it is full of 20th century material from the time period of the brown pre-brown hall with United pre-brick.
Pre-brick brown.
Yeah,
It's complicated.
Yeah. So the female students,
Yeah.
a lot of their stuff is dumped in there. Cool assemblage, but we've only got the top part of it.
Thank you. Who has a question? Yes, Tanya.
I love how this project has demonstrated how the project and there was another P word and now I can't think of it. The project has demonstrated how the children are making their voices heard. They made their voices heard when Terry saw those names and that documentation that probably saved the building from being demolished, right? It was getting ready, so they made their voices heard. Don't tear down our history. And then the same thing happened at the site, right? This construction is happening, and then the children cried out, "Stop, we're still here, evidence is still here." But what the question that I have is, I'm sorry, and I went the long way around that, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to find out how was that missed? How did they not know where the foundation was of the school? Was the initial investigation only around the brown structure and then they didn't look like, how did that happen?
Yes, that's correct. So I'll speak to that from the work that Colonial Williamsburg did early on in the 20-teens and then the most recent 2020s excavations. Brown Hall was still being used as a dormitory, and the only way that we could actually get to the foundations was in the crawl space, which was probably from the height of this table to the floor, and it was full of steam pipes, and it was you could not excavate in that space. So it wasn't until Gates Hall and removing the floor. We'd always said, if you want us to really try and find us, the floor needs to be removed from the building. However, it's still being used as a dormitory. So Gates, the creation of Gates Hall and the renovation work that is being done with it, that is what gave us the opportunity to finally see it, because they had to rip the floor out. So the floor was completely gone, and with a couple turns of the shovel, like, there it is, there it is. Yeah.
Did you have an idea that it was probably under that?
Oh, we had an idea, but what we did not know is if the construction of Brown Dormitory, the brick Brown Dormitory, if it had destroyed all of the remains of the foundation and the cellar, we didn't know what how well preserved it was. Again, massive brick building on top of it. It was very likely that it could have been completely wiped out. So we had an idea of where it was based on maps of the property, so it should be here, but not being able to really look underneath the building to see if it was there or not. It was always kind of conjecture.
And then the undocumented seller as well.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah, there's no documentary evidence about the building itself, so we did not know if it had a cellar or not. Again, it wasn't until they pulled the floor out of gates that we were able to actually confirm all that stuff to see it. Yeah.
So as always, I have a genealogy question. In connections to the Diggs family. You said that you have very much information. Was that state, is that correct?
It was after the Diggs family.
Oh, after.
Yeah, after they owned it, yeah. We don't have a whole lot of deeds, records. Yeah, it's that time period between, kind of like the 1800s to 1920s.
Okay.
Yeah, do you have some information?
You know what? I'm always connecting names.
Right.
So it's the Diggs that went to Nova Scotia. And I wanted to know if they were part of that. In my line, my Diggs line.
So, I'm gonna say, so the Diggs family of Yorktown is different than the Diggs line that owned the house. That's right, yes.
Yeah.
I've not really researched the Diggs family because they don't show up as enslavers sending any children to the Bray School. So I've focused my efforts on the children that we do have the names of in those enslaving households. So I don't have any information.
Okay.
To answer that, yeah.
Okay. I'll research it.
Other questions?
I'm intrigued by the present location of the Bray School. I heard some time ago that when you moved the house there, you discovered afterwards that the possible second site of the Bray School was in fact just to the west of where the building is now. Is that still true?
That's true. Yeah. Yes, that is true. We believe that the second location is right there, be facing on Francis Street, where the current one of the Merchant Square parking lots is located. When some of the resurfacing was done back in, I think 2019 for that parking lot, we did monitor it. Nothing was apparent that showed up at that time, but they're also just doing a very surface level kind of work in there, so we didn't see anything. So doesn't mean that it isn't there. We know a lot of things get preserved underneath parking lots in this town, so it is possible. Yeah.
Parking lots everywhere.
Yeah.
Richard III was under a parking lot.
Other questions?
I don't mean to, dominate this, but I had a question about how you're preserving access to the foundations. You said you've not excavated everything there, that you want to leave something for future archaeologists. Is it going to depend on the buildings being torn down before the next generation will have access, or are you going to facilitate access some sort, say, in 10 years or 15 years?
I mean, that is an excellent question that I think would need to be asked of the W&M Mary Foundation, or Kellstrom and Lee, who's doing the construction work. What we requested is that, we opened up several test units in the areas that were gonna get blown out anyway. It's technical. And then the plan is to refill anything that would still be open would be refilled with clean fill. There'd be geotextile fabric go down first, and then clean fill on top of that, and probably vapor barrier. And there will almost certainly still be a crawl space. Whether, it's something that people could work in, I don't think so. But in the event of some massive plumbing overhaul or something like that, they would have to open all of that stuff up, and we all know that it's there. So if there is some massive plumbing overhaul or some other reason why, that section of the site will need to be, disturbed, they would have, access would have to be created or provided. I don't know if there's a hatch. I'm not really sure. Again, yeah, that's a question, but one of the great things is there's going to be a museum, a display, and people won't be able to say, we didn't know it was there. Of course you knew it was there. Look, it's on the carpet, right there. This is a thing that keeps me up at night, you know. Preservation in place is an excellent way to preserve archaeological sites, so long as everybody remembers that it's there. If you're doing a project where a sports field is gonna be put on top of a site, that's great. It preserves the site, so long as people remember that they can't install a sprinkler system deeper than however deep the fill is that's protecting the site. And my worry is that knowledge gets lost, but in this case, that knowledge is not gonna be lost. It's gonna be a permanent part of the building. So anyway, that's what I know, which is nothing. Sorry.
So to that point is because we've been showing the photographs of the artifacts and because we're talking about an exhibit and we've got the Colonial Williamsburg's Archaeology Lab and new facilities opening, if people want to see these artifacts beyond just the exhibit that's going to be in Gates Hall, where will they come to see that?
Yeah, I can speak to that, and I'm very excited to, and thanks for the opportunity to plug the new Archaeology Center at Colonial Williamsburg. So we are constructing a 40,000 square foot archaeology laboratory and exhibit space right across the street from the art museums at Colonial Williamsburg. And in that space, so it's a 2-story building. On the second floor, there's just a wonderful film strip of windows that goes along the second floor, looking to the north, and you can see, you're looking directly at the Bray School. You're looking right at it. And there's an exhibit wall right behind where you can see the Bray School. That will have the display then of materials that came from the site. So you can see it, you turn around, and there's the materials right there. So we will be building in an exhibit on the Bray School. A lot of other sites at Colonial Williamsburg too, but you're looking right at it. And what an opportunity for us to be able to showcase those artifacts. And don't worry, there's enough artifacts for there to be a display in Gates Hall and in our own building. There's plenty of stuff. That's a great thing. We got a lot of
Spare a couple of marbles.
He's ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, thanks for that, asking that question. We're excited to be able to put that exhibit together.
That'd be good. Oh, I'm glad I asked. Tim, you had a question?
The question I have, and you will, it's a technical one, you will explain it to me. With the whole Colonial Williamsburg campus, is it considered a federal historic landmark across the campus? Or do you still have to designate certain locations on the campus as a federal historic landmark? And would this particular site, do you think would be one that could be designated as a federal historic landmark? But I'm thinking in Colonial Williamsburg, shouldn't it be across the campus itself as one whole piece, or is it in different pieces?
That's correct. Our 300-acre campus, as it were, is National Historic Landmark. So it is. So the Bray School is encompassed within that landmark status. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
This one's not specific to the Bray School, but just archaeology in general. I have a friend who goes around and finds fingerprints in bricks and then does talks on that sort of thing. Do you guys do any of that here? I know that's not under the ground, but up on top, and I bet you all know that.
I mean, we have bricks with fingerprints on them. I'm based at W&M Mary. We do work all over the state, but we also do work right across the street on campus. We were doing some work around the Wren building, and as part of that work, they're doing a big rehabilitation of the Wren. As part of that, part of the original kiln from that was created to make the bricks for the foundation of the Wren was reopened. Colonial Williamsburg archaeologists found it 100 years ago, and then we said, oh, look, it's still there. And
We didn't forget that one.
no, did a great job uncovering it 100 years ago. As part of this renovation rehabilitation work, they've got to do work around the foundation. So we did collect a couple of those bricks that are remnants of the kiln. And yes, it's got a nice big thumbprint and a couple of fingerprints on the other side. That brick is from the 1690s. That kiln is the oldest building on campus because it was there before they built the Wren. Just, it gives me chills just thinking about it. We have not gone further with that. I'm not sure what else we could do. I mean, we could take the fingerprint and run it through, ask law enforcement to run it through, but I'm sure there's no criminal case.
If they got it, yeah.
Yeah, that would be amazing, wouldn't it? Oh, vampires walk among us. But yes, things like that. Bricks are like some of the most common everyday artifacts that you find anywhere. It's almost, it's like, oh, it's brick, but it's a literal building block, right? And we find them on most every historic site, either because of a chimney or because of a foundation or whatever reason, papers. And then to have the fingerprints of the person who probably made that brick, that's just amazing. But you also find other things. You find like cat paw prints and dog paw prints. I found a brick with a pig snoot in it. I love all of that. And again, it's another one of those like real connections, the tangible connections to people, but also critters. And just, can you imagine being a brick maker and you're all day, every day, you're just pounding clay into a form and putting it so that it will dry, and then eventually it will get fired, and the pig just walked across all the bricks. I can relate. I don't have pigs, I have cats. But I can relate. Yeah, so.
What's funny is that pigs were, we found pig
Yeah.
prints in our bricks too.
Yeah.
Pigs were, it was illegal to have pigs within the city limits.
Oh.
So it's one of those things that, well, obviously they were still roaming around, so,
Yeah.
even the most mundane of things, archaeology, I'm trying to wring as much information out of these things.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna say thank you, first of all, again, thank you to Jack and Elizabeth and to Janice for being here and leading this conversation. I really appreciate you all and your insights and just everything you shared, especially the personal stuff that you shared. I really appreciate you doing that. And thank you to all of you in the room. And I appreciate everybody, your input and your engagement with this. And we're going to close out this session now. And thank you for joining us. And please stay in touch with us, like I normally would do at the end of every Bray School Stories session, for the latest news and happenings from the W&M Bray School Lab. Please be sure to check out our website. It's wm.edu/Bray Lab. And we look forward to seeing you at our next Bray School Stories. Thank you very much, everybody.